proudly, and we proudly present our good friend, the U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, Ben Johnson. Ben, great to be with you.
Thanks so much for having me on, as always.
I have had a dream, and the dream is, people are sitting there going, are you going MLK on us here, Crane? Well, no, I'm not going that. It's I would say, in reference to that, probably not as big, not even close, but it still is a dream. It's a little dream. It's a dream to have some balance on MSNBC, especially when it comes to the issue of life. Maybe Ben Johnson on the panel of the Alex Wagner Show, U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, because without Ben Johnson on the panel, you get introductions like this to an issue regarding science and if the baby feels pain at 20 weeks. Roll it. All right, so we'll get that ready. Roll it. Not ready. Okay. It would be cut 32. It's 31 twice, it seems, but it's the second 31 on the clip sheet. All right, so we'll get that ready. It was lined up. All right. So, Ben, see, that's what happens. I think everybody was dreaming about that just for a moment. And we sit there and we think, okay, it would be nice to get both sides of the story. So here we will have this. Roll it.
In the movement to roll back choice in this country, there is one number you will hear a lot in the coming weeks. Coming months, 20 weeks. Over the past 3 years, bans on abortions at or before 20 weeks have been enacted in over a dozen states, most recently in Texas. With names like the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, these bills are based on a theory that a fetus can feel pain at 20 weeks. And while they claim to be rooted in science, in actuality, they are not. Writing in Salon, Katie McDonough calls the fundamental justification for these laws a really big, really popular lie. And I ask you, what happens at 20 weeks? Is the fetus capable of feeling pain? And why is there this pseudoscience out there saying otherwise if that's not in fact true?
Well, there's facts, and the facts about fetal development have not changed. So fetal development is fetal development. And I think one thing that's contributed to confusion is sonograms, because sonograms have gotten incredible. They're very detailed. And so we get this very up-close view of what's happening, but it's not changing the way that the fetus develops. We know very clearly that the tracts in from the body to the brain that convey pain, those very specific sets of nerves, aren't laid down until much later in the pregnancy than the 20-week ban. So the 20-week number and the actual time that a fetus could really perceive pain are months apart.
Ben, is that true?
Wow. It was interesting to hear her say that sonograms are confusing people.
That's Dr. Ann Davis, by the way. Dr. Ann Davis.
Yes. Dr. Ann Davis, who is an abortion provider, as I understand, performs second trimester abortions herself. So she's not exactly a disinterested party to the discussion. But and so she's essentially trying to whitewash her own profession by saying, don't worry, there's nothing to be concerned about here. If you look at the facts of fetal development, that's the one thing you always have to say where the other side is right. She's right. Fetal development has not changed since Adam and Eve, first had Cain and Abel. This has been the exact same procedure ever since biology has been on this planet. And that tells you how egregious and how long the torture and death of babies has been going on through abortion. In fact, the connections for fetal pain come into existence between 12 and 18 weeks. Maureen Condict spoke about this. Dr. Maureen Condict from the University of Utah testified in front of the House Judiciary Committee back in May about this. But what she was expressing was the standard, typical, rational view of exactly how a fetus develops, how a child develops inside a mother's womb, and when he begins to feel pain. There was a huge meta-analysis done just last year by a doctor in Italy, reviewed 217 cases, and what they came to was there is no question whatever that in the third trimester, children feel pain. But all of that circuitry begins in the brain and in the nerves, so we don't get too lost. It's a little bit scientific, but in order to feel pain, the child has to have a developed thalamus, which is the brain stem, thalamus, and there have to be nerves, and then those nerves must be connected to the spinal column, which carries that information to the brain. All of that circuitry begins at about 4 to 8 weeks developing. It is connected between 12 and 18 weeks, so that a child begins to feel stimulus at that time. The first part of that the child can perceive any kind of pain is the mouth, and it goes on. Scientists have testified that within 13 and a half to 14 weeks, the child can feel pain everywhere except the back and the top of its head. So everywhere else is sensitive to pain, exactly as pain. And from that point forward, by 20 weeks, and at the very latest 24 weeks, again, third trimester, all of that is connected. Now, the pro-choice side has said that consciousness is a factor. The child is sleeping most of the time, so the child doesn't realize it's being tortured. There's some scientific question about exactly how much the child feels. However, if you look at the pain hormones that are released, stress hormones that are released when someone's in pain, they've measured these and they find that the child has an increase in stress hormones when it's being prodded from 20 weeks forward. And in fact, the younger the child is, the more it feels pain because one of the last things that it develops, first you develop the ability to feel pain, but it's not for another 10 weeks until 29 to 30 weeks that you develop an ability to control the way you feel pain and manage it. So in fact, they are incredibly sensitive to what's going on. Now, this was pretty technical. I hope it's not too dry, but
no, not at all.
What I want to say is just this: that not only is an abortion the murder of a child, but it is the torture of a child. And if anyone has ever seen an ultrasound-guided abortion, has ever seen an ultrasound of an abortion, you realize the child moves away. The child does everything they can to get away from it. There was a famous film about a child called The Silent Scream. And if the child could speak, the child would scream and say, "No, please stop." Since they can't, we have to do that. We have to go to our legislators and say, "Stop. You are torturing and killing our children, and we will not allow you to do it."
And Alex Wagner and the panel that consists of Dr. Ann Davis, as you mentioned, the consulting medical director for Physicians for Reproductive Health, Isla Hogue, NARAL's president, and Katie McDonough, associate editor, Salon. And they have come together. Specifically, McDonough has authored the piece, "Fetal Pain is a Lie." Now, this entire segment, which took place a couple weeks ago, was done, and you didn't have a Ben Johnson there. This clip you're going to hear about how really mean the science is and the justifications are and the legislation is to single mothers who are looking to abort their babies. I'm not kidding. Roll it.
I think people don't understand 20 weeks. To have an abortion in 20 weeks means someone is in a desperate situation. I mean, it is not some sort of choice over whether or not they think they can afford to have a baby.
I'd welcome anybody to talk to me about the patients that I see and their very real circumstances. Just in the last few weeks, these are services that I provide. In the last few weeks, I've had a number of patients who were 22, 23 weeks, who had fetal treatments fail, who had a fetal condition develop much later in the pregnancy that never could have been diagnosed early. Without no matter what the science, it's not going to be there. So these are conditions that are going to occur. They can be very severe, and women they're deeply affected. They feel very stressed by finding someone to take care of them, by going through surgery. They have concerns about that, as anyone would who's having an operation. And then to say to them, now I'm going to make you worry about something that isn't real, so that just adds something else onto the pile that they have to think about and worry about, and it's not how doctors should be talking to patients.
Elise, we know that this isn't really, of course, about fetal pain. It isn't really even about I would say the protection of life. It's about a concerted effort to roll back reproductive rights and make it harder and harder and harder for women to exercise control over their own bodies.
Absolutely.
And
so Elise Hogue, obviously on board in that statement. Ben, I want you to be at that table right there, and I want you to respond. They go to you, the camera's on you. You've just heard what Elise Hogue has said about going through the process, and at 20 weeks, it's not a financial decision. There are some other factors at play.
Yep. Well, and really, where I would begin is that last statement from the host, I think, Alex Wagner, who
yes.
I believe, if I was hearing the audio correctly, she was the one who said that that really this isn't about protecting life at all. It's really just about harming women. She brings to the abortion discussion basically what Justice Kennedy brought to the homosexuality discussion, which is it's just animus. Everyone who disagrees with you not only is wrong, but is hateful and evil. And I think that that's terrible. I think it stilts our political discussion. It prevents and shuts off the rational portion of our brain. And for liberals who often style themselves as rationalists or free thinkers, to shut off the rational portion of our brain is inexcusable. So I don't care for that particular kind of argumentation.
Well said.
When you hear these discussions about, the facts are mean, the facts are harmful, I think that a doctor's job is to put all of the facts on the table in front of someone and allow that person to take everything into consideration before they make a decision, which is precisely what Planned Parenthood has been against. Every time you have an informed consent law, every time you have an ultrasound law, every time that you require someone to receive information about the procedure that's going on for the child who's being aborted, they step forward, they motivate everyone that they can to write in against it. They try and lobby against it, and then they sue and have judges issue injunctions against these laws until ultimately they're cleared. So Planned Parenthood, Elise Hogue and NARAL, all of these organizations are dedicated to stopping the free flow of thought, the free flow of information, yes. And this is how they make their money.
And so, tomorrow you're going to join us with a story on privacy and Obamacare, the navigators. Ben, we won't have time tonight. We're jam-packed, but thank you for joining us, brother. Take care.
From the AFR National Weather